Hello everyone. Let's look at the implementation of quicksort. Here we have an array and we need to sort it using quicksort. So we will define the function quicksort. We'll check if the length is less than or equal to 1. We will return it. Otherwise, we will proceed with the implementation. So how quicksort works is it picks a pivot element and then it puts the elements which are less than our pivot element to the smaller array and the values which are greater than our pivot element into a larger array. And it will keep dividing the array till we have one single pivot element left. And while again merging the array, it will sort itself. So let's see. We have a pivot. We'll take the pivot. We can take any pivot. I'm taking the last element as pivot. And then I'm taking two different arrays. One is smaller and one is greater. Right? Then we will look through the each elements of the array, excluding the pivot element because we have already taken it. And we'll check if x is less than equal to pivot. Then we will add it in smaller array. Otherwise, we will add it in greater array. And then we will call same method quicksort on the smaller and the greater array. So we will create two variables, left and right. And then we'll return left plus pivot plus right, right. Let's call this function this way, print it. Okay, this is it. So if you see now, our elements are sorted 1, 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9. And how it is happening? We picked a pivot element. So we picked one as pivot element in this case. And then we created two arrays, smaller and greater. And then we iterated over each element and we see if 3 is greater than or less than the pivot. So 3 is greater than the pivot, we added it in the greater one. And if any value is less than 1, we will add it in the smaller one, right? So this is how we created smaller and greater. And then we created two variables left and right, and we did a sorting on smaller as well as greater. So how it will happen is for all the smaller elements, we are again doing the quick sort, and then all the larger element, we are again doing the quick sort. And in the smaller element, again we are picking up pivot. So this this left and right will keep on breaking down till we have single element left, which would be pivot. And when we will having the pivot, we will just return the pivot, and then while returning, we will return left with pivot with right. So this will be sorted, right? Let's look at the next question. Partition index. So we need to consider the last element as pivot. So in this case, we have already considered the last element as pivot and then rearrange the array so that the pivot ends up at the correct position. So let's see how to implement this. We have an array. Five, okay. And when we need to pick the last element as pivot and then place it at a correct index. So for five, the correct index would be something where the elements before it would be less than 5 and elements after it would be greater than 5, right? So let's see how we can implement this. So let's keep the name unchanged. But now we will change the function into fun. We will pick the pivot as last element -1. And what we will do is we will have variable I, which is 0. And then we will iterate over each element of A. A minus 1. And we'll see if the value is less than pivot, then we will swap A of I with A of J. And then increment the I pointer. And finally, once we have iterated over each element, then we will swap the last ith element with the last element. And we will return I. Let's run this. So our pivot index is 3. 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So our pivot index would be this place. And our pivot element is A of -1, which is 5. So our 5 should be at this location. So finally, our array would look like this: 0, 2, 4, 5, 6, right? I mean, if we sort it, then 5 will end up at index 3 because the elements less than 5 are 0 to 4 and the element which is greater than 5 is 6, right? Let's have a walkthrough of how it works. We checked if 6 is less than 5. Here we did if A of j is less than pivot, right? So our first element was 6 and we checked if 6 was less than 5. So it was not. So we moved on to the next element 2 and see if 2 is less than 5. So when 2 is less than 5, so what we did, we swapped 2 with 6. So our array became 2, 6, 0, 4, 5, right? Then we moved on and we checked if 0 is less than 5. So 0 less than 5. So again we swapped I with j. So our element became 0, 6, 4, 5. Then we will check if 4 is less than 5. So 4 is less than 5. 4 is less than, okay, this last condition we won't be checking because it will go from 0 to length of a minus I. So we have our I equals to 4 and now we will swap our last element 5 with our ith value element 4. So now our values will look like, sorry, 6. So now we have swapped value 6 with 4.